I think I already introduced the topic, so I will go directly to the second slide. Just to briefly introduce once again what the European Historic Houses for which I'm working does. So there's an association of 24 national associations of privately owned historic houses. And each association has their members. So it means that in total, we have a very large network of private owners of historic houses. And our role in this project is as well to raise awareness and to show you and other educational partners how we can make use of this of our common European heritage for the educational purposes. But our main role as well is to raise awareness about the historic houses on the European level. It's to defend the preservation, conservation, and transmission of the heritage and the houses to the wider public. So in total, if we add all the national associations and their members, we represent 50,000 historic houses. So it's quite an amount, I would say. And when it comes to the topic of my presentation, I choose this quote of our coming from our UK member. Nothing tells a nation's story like its homes. And I guess it's something we can say since the beginning of the history. Places where people are living, where people live the ordinary life, there's something that transmits customs, traditions, and they reflect our history. So I think this will be the quote that will follow, that will guide us throughout the whole presentation. Because so what about these private historic houses? They can be different. They can be castles. They can be palaces, manors, villas, farmhouses. Their construction, their structure might be different, but what they do have in common is that they bring back the past back to life and allow us to think maybe critically about how society has progressed and changed. So in this sense, the first-hand experience of visiting these historic houses has a strong educational value to young people, but for adults as well. Because when these pupils go out of the classroom, they can face the cultural heritage just as it is. And these houses, not like museums, they're not static, but they can really personally testify examples of countries past, present, and the future, because these houses are still inhabited. So when it comes to the education, how can we teach with historic places, and how we can make use of our European heritage to educational purposes? So as I said, the common type of buildings reflect the everyday history of ordinary people. And whereas the local history is particularly well documented, the properties, these houses, are usually ignored by the textbook. So we already said, and it was said yesterday, how hard it is to find photographs, to find documentation, and it's even harder to find examples, yes, of who lived in the house, what was the story of this particular building. So every place has a story, and these private houses do as well. And I think that by linking these tangible places to the written history, so the general history, we can come with something accessible, publicly accessible, and it can be done by teachers who can bring history closer to life. And students, they need to perceive the importance of their surroundings, where they live, what is around them, how these buildings impacted the local or regional or even national history. And as well, these places help students of, I would say, media age to have hands-on experience with primary sources. So we were talking today about Wikipedia, but these houses can be as well an element of education, because what they can do is, by personal experiences, they can involve historic places to provide in-depth exploration, because when you enter inside, you can touch it, you can feel it, you can enjoy it. So I would say it's an immersive education. And then you can use as well the imagination to recreate the history. To conclude on this slide, besides this traditional cultural heritage developments, family-owned historic houses, they display a variety of heritage types. First of all, they are treasure full of European culture, that's for sure, where we can find picture galleries in form of private family collections, cathedrals in form of private chapels, theaters in form of private music rooms, libraries in form of ancient family archives, museums in the interior halls, or handcrafted pieces of the time. So heritage houses as well, being inhabited for centuries, sometimes by the same families, are the repository of the European tangible heritage, and they reflect memories and history of the local territory. And so the educational opportunities they provide, they are numerous. It can range from structural learning programs for primary, secondary, college and university students, to as well engaging adult experiences, non-formal education. And this is how I structured the presentation. I will talk about different educational objectives. And each of the example I will use has, of course, can be adapted to different audiences. Yes, from primary, secondary, to the higher education level, by going as well through the adult education. So we have four, and my presentation will be very practical. I didn't want to talk about a lot of technical aspects. So I decided to divide it into 4 different groups and then to select a couple of examples. So let me introduce you how the private historic houses are making use of these educational tools. First, there are this classical tool, the guided tours. We might say that it might be boring, but it's it's a first-hand experience actually with any house, any museum. what is particular in the case of private historic houses, that very often the families who are living in the houses can be the guide, which is another aspect, another interesting and interactive aspect. So here we have an example from Italy of Villareale di Marlia, who is organizing, besides guided tours, exhibitions, art workshops, and other cultural activities, live concerts, photographic exhibitions as well. Another example coming from Belgium, Castel van Hex, who is as well organizing the occasional guided tours for schools, but as well for adults. In France, we have an example of Château de Septembre, who is organizing guided tours for families, events on site. They are organizing as well medieval weekends. So another aspect of to how to link the history of the building to the interactive educational tools. They organize theatrical visits and workshops. Example from the Netherlands, when people can learn about the ancient history of the states. And what is very interesting about this particular example is how they use the community building by an initiative called Friends of Marienwerth, who counts 600 volunteers who are as well involved in preparing the educational programs. They're preparing workshops, so every month you can choose something else, and to provide as well opportunities for schools. And what is interesting as well, that this house organizes internships and apprenticeships for students. So another educational aspect. We have an example from Portugal, houses of Fonteira and Alorna, who are organizing thematic tours guided by experts, and educational services targeting school children. But as well on the cultural level, the activities linked to the history of the building. So here we can count, we can enumerate examples like bridge tournaments, musical and poetry recitals. So there is really a lot. And the last example under this theme is Ferté-Saint-Aubin in France, who is organizing thematic activities by presenting the history of the castle. So cooking demonstrations, research, environmental activities. And of course, this needless to say, during the pandemic, these activities were changed into the virtual tours. And we, as European Historic Houses, we were inviting owners as well to display, to showcase their properties on social media. So it was available to everyone to have a look and to hear the owners talk about their properties, about the history of the house, but obviously without this interactive aspect. Then the example that I think is the most relevant for our project is where historic houses are becoming schools. And Zamek Zdar from Czech Republic, I think, is the best example because it's not only the school hosting, well, it's a former monastery hosting a school and the New Generation Museum inside. So not only a school where people are being educated as many other students, but as well they have a very innovative approach. So they decided to open a museum which gives pedagogues of elementary and secondary schools and their students opportunities in form of comprehensive educational programs that overreach history, art history, everyday life, but also math, physics, and anatomy. So very, very interesting example. And they have three actually different programs. So here we have an example of the lower primary school, which is entitled Be Close to the Stars, where, yes, of course, it's for younger, it's for the youngest, but what children can learn is, for example, about the topic of stars as part of the universe, stars as a symbol, geometry in architecture. Uh, what can be the output of such a program is, first of all, to learn about nature through observation, but as well to learn about the architect who built this place, Santini, to interpret visual artistic expression, museum exhibits related to the theme, etc. So here we are covering art, mathematics, and environmental education. And then we have a program for high school. So for high schools, there is a labyrinth of time, where the leitmotif of this program is stability of space. And through this program, high school students can learn about architecture, visual arts, economy, and so they can experience as well what's inside the museum, what's inside the building, to develop, to learn about the architecture. And so for this curriculum, we have geography, geology, we have civic and social basis, we have history from Middle Ages to the beginning of modern times, art and culture, and of course, artistic styles. So I think Zdar Museum showcases really how we can make use of historical buildings to different kind of educations. And what is interesting is that it's all in the framework of the educational guidance. So they are following what students are learning in schools to their program. So it's an extra activity, something different to what they can learn in regular classes. As a matter, yes, of an extra activity. And then, of course, they're hosting their school. The second example, it's a school, it's a house in Romania, Petre Carp Manor, which was turned into a school, this time for crafts. So not the formal education, but education for those who want to apply crafts, which is very important. And in this way, not only they are providing students the knowledge about restoration, about how to make traditional arts craft, but as well people learning about the traditions, about different aspects of what can be done, what was done in this kind of manner, to reproduce or replicate the art crafts. So another very interesting project. And then we can, of course, talk about non-formal education. Here I chose the example of Château de Mazures in France, which is a beautiful castle. And what they decided to do is to organize cooking classes for teenagers, but as well as adults. Château de Mazures has gardens, has a permacultural farm, and the idea was to make use of what they have in these gardens to involve in a very engaging way children, students, to collect them and then organize cooking classes in English. So we have not only immersion in the house, in their surroundings, cooking classes, so another activity, and then all of this made in English to learn the new vocabulary, to practice English, to go a little bit outside of the box, and to use different techniques of learnings. So I here have a quote of the owner who says that the aim was to demonstrate that castles are not only beautiful buildings, but also places that can serve as the basis for many projects of all types. And I think it's a project that shows how we can combine practical with useful experiences. And during pandemic as well, they decided to go online, so the cooking classes were available online, and then they were sending the vocabulary to participants so they can reuse the recipes with in their houses. The second example, it's more about theater activities in Villareale di Marlia in Italy, where they are organizing live concerts, photographic exhibitions, and art workshops for students. Another example, it's from Italy as well. Here we have from non-formal education examples of cooking classes and tasting on local projects, as well as truffle hunting. Then the very interesting example from Belgium, which is Castel de Merode in Westerlo, who initiated the project called Historalia. And Historalia, it's so everything is happening inside the castle, and every year or every 6 months, depending on the program, students can watch an opera, a musical about the national history. I saw that this year they are organizing a musical called 1830 about the Belgian Revolution. And it's a very popular project that brings a lot of students inside. So these historical musicals around the castles are rooted in national, local history, and are conceived as a magic spectacles in the historical decor. So I think it's worth mentioning. Then we have Château de Linière, who as well is focusing on artistic projects. They are organizing, they want to engage young audiences who never visited historical places to get acquainted with culture mainly. They are organizing writing and storytelling workshops. They are organizing meetings with artists after the pieces, after the theater pieces. They are organizing internships during school holidays. And so these workshops are organized as well in parallel with interventions in schools. So they're in close contact with schools located in the territory nearby the castle. And so each year they host as well the opera house. They organize opera for children between September and June, and an outdoor opera as well. And here, so these are examples I already mentioned, but it was only to show you as well that the previous examples, they were hosting guided tours. They organize as well the medieval weekends, like here the castle in France. Here, sustainable activities, so farming activities. Here as well, the link between families. We have Château de la Ferté-Saint-Aubin, who is organizing family games, Easter egg hunt, Christmas events. And and nature studies and artistic workshops in Château de Prège. So here we have a variety as well of possibilities to how involve children, students during the guided visits to the castles and 200-year-old estates. So by participating in the workshops of choice and the last activity is the treasure hunt around the castle. So here we have, I see from the program, they are organizing history workshops about the estate's history, then nature studies and artistic workshops about the design, about architecture. For example, yes, for the design, the idea is to create your own coat of arms after studying the coat of arms of the different owners of the castle, using the natural elements found on the estate to create your own work of art. This is, of course, for younger students, but then the program is adapted to different audiences and to different ages. And then I have the last example of interactive tools. Once again, it's a project we were involved in 3 years ago when we created a coloring book presenting 10 castles and historic houses. So it's a coloring book for children, but I wanted to explain as well that these interactive tools showcasing the history of the buildings may be adapted. So we were working here with an artist who designed this coloring book, but I can think that, of course, we can adapt and modify this model to be more suitable for students in the secondary schools. Something short, something that made them reflect about the history of the house, and not only the house, but of the families who were living there, of the buildings nearby, of the environment nearby. So here I am showing it to you as an example, but of course, yes, you need to know that it's something that can be developed in another way. And then to finish, I wanted to explain as well about two initiatives of our members, because as I said, we are working with 24 associations, and each of them is, of course, involved in different educational activities. Our Italian member is supporting crafts and skills through the pilot program called Progetto Alternanza Scuola-Lavoro, which is supported by the ministry, and where here this time the university students can do internships in the privately owned heritage houses. So here we are combining the formal education with something very practical, where people will live with the owners to develop very practical skills of a craftsman. That then may be used for the restoration, for other activities, and the similar case, it's available as well in Belgium, where our association, the Belgian association, is cooperating with the Union of Heritage Craftspeople, where they set up a collaboration with as well the private owners who are inviting craftspeople to do the restoration works. So these two examples showcase as well that not only schools but as well the universities may make use of the historical buildings, and it's always in cooperation. So it's a great example of how we can combine both. And to end my presentation, these are already numbers, but I think they are quite impressive, and they show the potential of what we can do and what impacts might be done by schools and learners. Here is the number of schools that are welcomed by the historic houses every year. So the ideas I presented, they are only examples, but I hope they gave you an idea of how we can make use of them. You are having the project partners are having schools that are of the heritage, but why not going in the other way around and having a look at places where people still live, where this history is vibrant, where it can be experienced. So here I'm leaving you with our contact details. I will share you the presentation afterwards. Thank you very much.